more variety.
We ain't one at a time in here. We're mass communicating.
You're listening to Para X.
circle thrice about to keep unwelcome spirits out.
Abide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Merry meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron here on the Para X Radio Network. My guest tonight is Savannah Arianta, and she's an internationally known psychic medium and spiritual counselor. Also, as a best-selling author, she helps others recognize their authentic selves and find purpose in living a heart-centered existence. Her unique style and connection to others is a powerful healing tool that has been a revolutionary force for change in the lives of her worldwide clientele. She's the author of Lightworker, Understand Your Sacred Role as Healer, Guide, and Being of Light, and her latest book, The Lightworkers Source, an enlightening guide to awaken the powers within and guide the reader into a purpose-driven life that they were brought to this planet to live. Welcome, Savannah. How are you?
I'm great, Marla. Thank you so much for having me on your show tonight.
Like I told you a little bit earlier, I read the book and it just really resonated with me, and I put up on my Facebook today that people should make this required reading.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you found it helpful.
I did, and we're going to show people how helpful it is. There's so much to cover in a short hour, but we're going to get right to it and see what we can do. You explained at the beginning of the book that people need a calling and need to know why they exist, but many can't find their focal point. And it's become your path to assist them in finding those aha moments. How did you find yours?
Oh, Marla, it started so far back. I really believe that I was born into this role, as I feel we all are. We just need to find our roles. My mother was a psychic medium, and my grandmother was a mystic from Sicily. So I was raised with these powerful, really wonderful, intuitive women who indoctrinated me into this life. And as I grew up, I kind of developed my own way of working with clients and doing readings, and my practice just kind of evolved. So it's a lifelong journey.
It always is. People think, well, I found it, I don't need to do any more, but that's hardly the case.
Absolutely.
Now, for those who may not be familiar with the term Lightworker, can you explain what that is, how one becomes one? Because I thought the way you put it in the book was really kind of so obvious that people sometimes overlook it.
Well, yeah, we talk a lot about energy in the books, and light and dark energy and source energy, which is what kind of fuels our existence. And a light worker is someone who aligns more with the light side of source energy and wants to expand on that and wants to help heal, wants to help others, and feels that calling to kind of heal through unconditional love. So a lot of times light workers have this calling, they have this feeling or urging to embrace a higher purpose, but they can't find it. They just can't figure out what it is. So that's what the books are really about, identifying yourself as someone who wants to align with that light energy, and then how to implement it and how to heal others using it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were talking in the book about the fact that people are born light workers, in that they plan this before they come back. And I'm very much on the same page with you about being able to plan our lives before we actually get here. But for those who may not be, does everybody have the capability of being a light worker, or is that a special path that only some people are allowed on this earth when they're here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I believe it is something that we all work toward, or we should be working toward. I don't believe everyone is a light worker. Obviously, there are some people in this world or on the planet or in the universe that are not meant to align with the light side of source energy. And that's why we have polarities. There's both light and dark. And in the books I explain that as well. We have to have dark in order to have light, in order for light to exist. So not everyone is a light worker, but we can always make the choice to align with that part of source, the healing part, the part that wants to do good, the part that has those intentions to help. So it's not as if we're all light workers, but we all have that capability. It's just a matter of choice.
And maybe, everybody can do it in a different way.
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be, in the books I discuss light workers throughout history who really we've come to know as artists or famous musicians who healed through their work. But light work doesn't have to be done on a grand scale. Even the smallest gesture can be one that expands the light energy of the planet.
Mm-hmm. And, interesting enough, you're talking about the light and the dark, and I never even gave a thought to the word dark worker, which you talk about, and yet it's so obvious because, as you said, where there is light, there is dark. And dark workers are, in fact, a reality, but you say that the term dark worker isn't derogatory because there is no concept of good and bad in the universe. So are you saying that things just are, and it's up to maybe the individual to interpret intent?
Absolutely. I really believe that judgment is a human emotion, and that within the spirit or within source energy, there really is no judgment. So we can't judge and say a dark worker means bad or negative. It's just simply a matter of having that balance. And as I said, you have to have the dark in order to experience the light. So perhaps a light worker is someone who puts out light energy, and maybe a dark worker is someone who takes it in. So there you have that cycle. So, and you have to have that balance. And I believe that our strength really lies in somewhere in the middle and kind of, accepting all aspects of ourselves. Because even the strongest light worker has their dark side. We all have that, and we all have to embrace it. And I really want to stress that when I say the word dark, it doesn't mean evil. Dark and evil, they're not the same thing, although there is evil in the universe and in the world. But dark doesn't necessarily mean evil. We all have dark times. And, I give examples. If we're in grief or we lose a loved one, it kind of puts us in a dark place. Or somehow we're wounded or hurt in some way. We go into a period of darkness in our lives. So that's the time when we need to absorb the light energy in order to heal, kind of be a taker. And that's okay if we have that balance.
Yeah, exactly. And it is more about balance. That black cloud does show up, and nobody is 100% living in love and light. I mean, it's impossible, I think.
It certainly is. And I really believe anyone that tells you it's possible is really misleading people, because we have to have the dark in order to grow and process and live in the light. So it's there. It's an unavoidable part of our existence.
Yeah, it's very much like the fact that left-handed people are not sinister.
Exactly. I'm a lefty. You're
Me too.
Yes. You're right.
But they've always said left depicts sinister. And again, it's all an interpretation in how you look at it. And I kind of like thinking things just are. And we just need to know both sides of the coin, accept it, embrace it, and work with it.
Exactly, and process it through. And as I said, we all have to embrace that dark part of ourselves as well, even as light workers, and work through it. And like I said, there comes a time when we have to take in light. We can't always be putting it out. As light workers, we can't always be giving out light. There's a time when we need to take it in. It's got to be an equitable balance.
Right. You can't run a car without gasoline, right?
Exactly. You're going to run out sooner or later. Take it in.
Now, how does one know if they're a light worker? Is there kind of that V8 moment at some point? Is it something inherent?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I do think I think it's there, and I think a lot of people really struggle with it. They can't identify it. They know that they're here for a reason. They know that they want to do something, help someone, or heal the planet, or do something that's going to improve life for people or help humanity, but they can't put their finger on it. So I think that it's there the whole time, but there's an awakening process. And until we get to that point when we are awakened, we're kind of like sleepwalking through life.
So what does it take to awaken?
Well, I believe it's the whole first chapter of the Lightworkers Source talks about the awakening process. And it really is a process, and you go through steps from birth until the time you awaken to your true identity. And it really is a struggle. It's a struggle between your human side and your spiritual side. So, when you're born, you're definitely in that human kind of id mode where you are learning how to survive, and you're learning all the primitive type of behaviors that you're going to need to survive on this planet. And then as you progress, you start to go through different phases. As I say, phase 2 of awakening is negotiating. When you start to get that urging, and you get the urging and you resist, and the urging and resist, it's usually in the teenage years when you see that rebellion stage, when people are kind of struggling with their identity and struggling with trying to find a purpose. And then it leads into the early 20s, I would say. And then phase 3 is when you're kind of adjusting, when you're awakening and you're becoming aware that you have a higher calling. And now you're just trying to figure out what it is, and adjust to the fact that it's time to surrender to your calling and really kind of start to see it through, try to find what it is. Light workers have all different callings, whether it be, you don't have to necessarily be in a spiritual practice, be a psychic or an energy healer. You can be an artist. You can be a musician. You can be a doctor or a scientist. Light workers come in all shapes and forms. And then finally, the last stage is really the acceptance and the mastery of your role, where you're kind of comfortable in what you're doing and you are settled into the fact that you're here to help heal the planet. So there are 4 stages, and really stages 2 and 3 can kind of be a little traumatic. And that's usually when, you see the rebellion, or you see the feelings of isolation, or feeling different, or feeling outcast, and not really feeling like you belong, because you're kind of like homesick at that point. Your senses are wearing down to, the harsh realities of the planet, and you're kind of longing to go back to your beautiful origin, those beautiful planes of love and light where you came from. So it can be very traumatic, the awakening process. But, the information in the book is very helpful, because when you're aware of what's happening and you say, okay, now I understand why I feel so isolated, why I feel like I don't belong here, you're able to now accept that and kind of work with it and go from there.
Now, you do concede that we all have free will, and some will choose not to advance. Do you consider that detrimental to our ultimate spiritual growth, or are some people just not ready for it in this lifetime?
Yeah, some people are not going to make that choice to move forward. And we're all on that ascension journey. We're all trying to move closer and closer to Source with each lifetime. So, eventually we're going to have to get to the point where we accept what we are and we embrace our light worker role so we can move forward. With this whole light worker theory and the books that I write, you have to kind of really accept the fact or accept reincarnation and know that, you have to come back. So if you're not going to accept your role this time around, you never get to it, it's your choice. But you're probably going to have to come back and repeat until you finally get it right.
Mm-hmm. And some people really rue that day or those days because, they've had such a bad time in this life, they do not want to come back. But it's that life lesson that things can be made easier if you do what you need to do this time. Then
exactly. Get it over with. It's we're here for a reason. So until we carry out that purpose, we're going to have to come back until we finally fulfill it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's daunting, but nothing is easy, and it's not supposed to be because if things are too easy, we don't learn,
exactly,
and we don't grow. So,
exactly.
Could you explain the dark night of the soul?
Yes, and I do write that it's a light worker rite of passage. And then, someone said, well, I don't want people to think all light workers have to suffer through this horrible dark night of the soul. And it sounds so terrible. But actually, what it is a time when you come to realize it's not so much about what triggers the dark night of the soul, which is usually a loss of some type of material possession or maybe a loved one, anything that's in the physical world. These losses trigger this dark night of the soul when finally you come to realize that nothing truly belongs to you here on earth, that nothing is forever here, that you can accumulate all the wealth and material possessions that you ever dreamed of, but they can be taken away from you. They don't really belong to you. And the only thing that really does belong to you is your eternal soul. And that's what's real. So it's kind of like mourning the death of this big illusion that the physical life is. Mm-hmm. And it's traumatic. It's traumatic to finally understand that, wow, all I've worked for, or I loved this person my entire life and now they're just gone. But to understand that they're not gone, that just the physical part of them is no longer, but their soul or their spirit lives on forever. And that's what is real. So until we accept that, the soul is the only thing eternal, the dark night of the soul continues. It's really just a mourning process of what is material and what is an illusion.
Mm-hmm. We hear the term higher self quite a bit. Mm-hmm. It's thrown about all over the place. Who or what is our higher self, and how important is it to connect with it?
Well, it's so important. Our higher self is really our soul, our spiritual self, which is kind of gets covered up through all the humanness that we pile on top of it throughout our lifetime. And sometimes we forget it's there. Our higher self is really our guide, our best friend. It is the person, we can call it a person, who knows everything about us through every lifetime we've ever lived, our whole soul history. And it really is our guide. So what happens is we forget. We forget that we have this soul or this spiritual self. We lose touch with it because we're so into our humanness, or we're so accustomed to only relating to the human self that we identify with. So to learn and get to know your higher self is really to get to know yourself under all the physical matter and taking away all the physical stuff and really getting down to the metaphysical self. And that's your true, authentic self. And when you get to know that person, your life changes because the direction is now no longer based on material or physical aspirations. It's based on your connection with your source creator. So, you really have to get to know that metaphysical self under the human self. As I say in the book, your humanness is an illusion. Your soul is what's real. And that's your higher self.
Mm-hmm. I just got a question from someone in chat, Kathy. Mm-hmm. And she said, I'm a human angel hybrid. I know my purpose, but having such trouble and wanting to leave this world and never return. Any advice for that?
Yes, because I think what she's feeling is, as we discussed, that feeling of homesickness and sadness, feeling isolated. People that come here from higher planes, such as she's saying she must be trying to say she comes from an angelic realm, I assume, feel homesick. They feel isolated. So my advice is to just continue with your healing work, because that's what we're all here for, and to find people like you, because it's very isolating, and find groups that help support you and others, try to seek out others that are like you, because I know the feeling. And really, kind of get in touch with who you are. You can say, I know I'm an earth angel and this is where I'm from, but really, what does that mean to you? And how to get in touch with that higher self so you don't feel so isolated and alone. Because the earth plane is a very harsh place to be. And for light workers or earth angels or people from the higher realms, souls from the higher realms, it can be very painful to be here. So, we kind of have to adjust. And in the book, The Lightworkers Source, there's a lot of meditations and practices to help you kind of keep your balance here. And it's kind of tough to keep your feet on the ground, when you have your soul is coming from the higher realm. So the book may be very helpful for Kathy.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about earth planes, and I want to talk also for a moment about astral planes.
Yes.
The earth being the first and lowest. Many people are just happy to stay grounded, but you feel it's important to ascend up the realms and that each one has gifts to offer. So how do we go about doing this, and what are some of the benefits?
Yeah, I believe that, in the book I discuss kind of 7 major places to be, and I felt like that would be the simplest way to break it down. There's an eternity of dimensions and that we could go through, but I picked 7. And the earth being the first plane, which is very dense, it's purely material. So that's what we've been discussing. The second plane is the astral plane, which is kind of like a buffer zone between the earth and the higher realms. So we all travel the astral plane from here because we do it during dreams, we do it during meditations, during altered states of consciousness. We kind of, when you kind of go into that zone, you're not quite on the physical plane, but you're on the astral plane. And that's a place where you can confer with your guides or your angels. You can confer with your higher self, maybe even deceased loved ones. And I even believe that when you astral travel and sleep, when you're sleeping, you can meet with other people who are in the physical as well, and kind of your spirits kind of converge and can get together on the astral plane. Mm-hmm. So I think that we all travel there, no matter what you do. Yeah, you want to stay grounded here on Earth, but there's a part of us, that spiritual part, that does travel through the higher realms, and the astral plane is that buffer zone in between. Then I discussed the third plane, which is where you begin to detach from the physical and adapt on a more spiritual level. And I really think that that's where you begin to take your role as a light worker. My guides have shown me that place as a choice. You can either choose to remain on the third plane and maybe be a spirit guide. And as we all know and talk about our spirit guides, they're on the third plane, just above the astral plane. Or you can decide to come back to Earth and work in a light worker capacity. But once you get to the third plane, you have experienced spiritual adaptation, and you're no longer attached to the physical. Mm-hmm. So then the fourth plane, I believe, is a plane of beauty, sight and sound, and this is where our artists and our musicians come from. When you're able to master the gifts of that realm, you're able to be able to create. And also, I believe a lot of the people they're calling empaths or empathic at this time come from the fourth plane. And those are also great healers. Empathic people are great healers. Mm-hmm. The fifth plane is where all the knowledge of the universe is stored, and that may be where people call, like perhaps the Akashic records are there. You know, all the knowledge, all the information of the universe is there. I also believe the cures for diseases are on the fifth plane and are sent down from there. The sixth plane is where our ascended masters reside, or our archangels. This is where they're just below source. You know, these people on this, or these souls on the sixth plane, have mastered the gifts of all the different realms. And then we discuss the seventh plane is where source is. And that's when, you know, when you finally get to that ascension, get through that ascension process, you get there to the seventh plane where you have achieved oneness, and you are now one with all there is. So that's kind of how I explain it in the book. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the higher planes, like the third plane up, are where the light workers or the spirits of higher vibration come from. As Kathy's speaking of, when they come down to Earth, they feel a bit displaced. And that astral plane is the buffer zone in between.
Mm-hmm. I have a question from Trent in chat, and he wants to know what you think of someone who feels themselves a primal child, even grew up that way.
Well, okay, now as we discuss in the awakening process, when we are born, we all are that. We're all primal, you know, and I think that I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, but that's really a stage that we need to kind of get through in order to survive here on Earth. But he's got to get more in touch with the spiritual part of himself. When I think of primal, I think of the human side, the survival aspect of our incarnation. So I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to. But he needs to more focus, kind of come out of that survival mode and more focus on the spirituality or the spiritual part of himself. And I hope that's what he means. I hope that was helpful.
And how would you suggest he start, assuming that we're on the right track here?
Right, if that's what he means. Well, I think that, as I said, he's got to go through the 4 stages of awakening so he can read through the book, you know, because as I said, awakening is a process. It doesn't happen, like you can't skip over one phase. You have to get through all 4 phases. So once he starts to acknowledge the fact that he's a spiritual being and then start to focus more on that side of himself rather than the primal or the mortal, his mortality, then, you know, that's going to start to grow and expand and take the lead in his life. So there are practices in the book as well, meditations or different visualizations that you can use to expand your spiritual self and kind of let your higher self take the lead for you.
Okay, he said he was referring as the animal side.
Well, yeah, that's what humans are. And I believe that when we're born, we're in that stage, and it's a very important stage for children. I believe that children all need to be in that kind of primal, what they call id, you know, kind of stage where you're in survivalist mode. Because even as a spirit or a light worker, you still need to have those skills in order to stay alive on the planet. You know, there's, you know, human side and spiritual side have to work together. So he needs to, I would say, really start to develop the spiritual side rather than that primal side, because he needs that balance. Both have to work together in order to achieve his goals here in this lifetime.
Yeah, he said he knows his spiritual side. It's the human connection he has problems with.
Yeah, see, that's I can understand that, and that's a lot of what the book is about. Is that we're kind of two in one. There is a human side and a spiritual side that have to work together in order to achieve mastery of your role. So please read the book, and I think he's going to find a lot of information in there to help to encourage that spiritual side to come out. We are all born with that primal survivalist mode or side of us, but you need to get past that.
And it's funny because Kathy just said, and I think a lot of us can relate to this on a lot of different levels, that she gets along better with animals and nature more than humans.
Absolutely. And I also go over that in the book. It's funny because they didn't even read the book, and they already know that animals, nature, these are our sources, our strongest sources of unconditional love, even children, babies. And I always work with my clients, especially those who have some heart chakra issues, and tell them, the first thing I tell them is go play with your pet, or go spend time with your animal, or go spend time with a baby. Kathy she's just like soaking up the unconditional love from the animals. And that's what she's in need of. That's what we all crave. Yes. And when the heart chakra is a little bit closed up, which it could be in her case, we seek it out. So, she needs to work on her heart chakra, and she'll see that unconditional love will start to flow through her from source rather than her having to seek it out. But, animals and nature and children, they're our greatest source of that. And unconditional love is the greatest healing source there is.
Yes, it is. And, it's funny, you must be psychic, because the next thing I was going to bring up, I was going to talk about chakras in general, and then I read the chapter in the book about the most sacred conduit and the heart chakra in particular. So let's focus on that. Explain to people maybe generally what a chakra is, or what they are, and let's talk about the heart chakra in particular.
Okay, well, your chakras are kind of like your energy portals. Since we're all fueled by this source energy, we need a way to systematize it or organize it. This is how I look at it. Organize this energy. And we have 7 centers throughout our body that kind of funnels and channels this energy throughout our physical body. And those are your chakras. And they all have different roles, and they all control different aspects of our lives, both physical and spiritual. And as a light worker or a healer, your heart chakra is it's your most sacred energy source, because that is where unconditional love emanates from. And if it's closed up through maybe because it's wounded, or if you've had some experiences that you haven't properly healed, then it kind of blocks our healing abilities, and it creates a vicious cycle. And it's very, it's a bad place for a light worker to have a closed up heart chakra, because once your healing capabilities are stifled, you begin to feel useless, because that's why you're here. So your heart chakra is your most sacred conduit, and there are exercises in the book to keep it flowing, keep the energy flowing, keep it healthy, keep it open, because the heart chakra is so sensitive that it's the first thing a light worker wants to protect. And it's the first thing to close up when we're wounded. So it's very important to protect that chakra.
Okay, and I agree. I've always been understanding of chakras. But sometimes you sit there and think, well, you're talking about this one and that one and this one. And then you read different books and it says, well, to cleanse this one, you do this, and they all need cleansing, but each one has a different cleansing. And it gets a little bit complicated, but I think it's important.
It is important. And, it doesn't have to be so complicated. It could be, you can visualize a waterfall. You can visualize it opening up and loving light energy flowing through it. Whatever works for you. Spirituality doesn't have to be so complicated. Meditation doesn't have to be so taxing where we have to sit in a quiet room and disrupt our daily routine. You can have your meditation, in your car for 5 minutes, before you go into your office. You can sit there and just kind of take yourself to that place where you're grounded and you're focused. And as far as your chakras, really all you have to do is some visualizations of cleansing and also allowing yourself, say for the heart chakra, allowing yourself to experience the pain and not bury it. Because it's so important not to keep pushing painful experiences down deeper and deeper until they're just so buried under toxic energy that you can't get to them. So, as I say in the book, it's important to process painful experiences, even broken hearts, in romantic relationships. It's okay to feel that pain and give yourself that time to be in that dark place like we spoke about in the beginning. So your heart chakra doesn't become so wounded and so filled up with this painful toxic energy that it can't function anymore. So, we have to really give ourselves a break and, allow ourselves to feel that pain. And it's not really a big practice to cleanse your chakras. I just picture a waterfall and I flush them right out. I visualize it all and I feel better when it's finished.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody isn't sure about the chakras, just Google. There's always 1,000 charts out there showing A to Z chakra.
Yes.
And just kind of get to know your chakras. I don't know any better way to put it. But
and there's a whole chapter on the book on your chakras as well. And where they are in your body, what they help you with, what strengths are within each chakra, and it's a lot to take in, but little by little you read and start to learn a little bit, and you'll figure it out, and you'll learn your own way of cleansing. It doesn't have to be a big ritual. Let's face it, we all have lives also here in the physical world that we have to maintain, but it's important also to be conscious of our spirituality, and it takes a little time just to take care of that, and it becomes almost like after a while it just becomes part of your routine, and it's just second nature.
And with a book like yours, I hope you'll agree with me on this, if somebody picks it up, it's not like you're in school and you need to read it cover to cover and to do a book report on it. As you look through it, there will be things that will jump out at you.
Definitely.
And I think little by little, if you hit the things that resonate with you, and then go back after you're done and just pick up little things at a time, because really there isn't going to be a test at the end of this necessarily.
No, you're so right. You will find chapters that, this sounds like something I really need to read, and you'll read that chapter, and then maybe later another chapter. You're absolutely right. You don't have to read it all in one sitting from cover to cover.
It's kind of the easiest way to learn and grow, because I think one chapter will make you curious about the next one and the next one, and little by little you're learning, and it's not painful, because a lot of people don't want to pick up a book, and it's too much like being back in school.
Exactly.
To learn. So
Right.
You kind of have to follow your muse, your instincts, and even if you pick up 2 or 3 things rather than the whole thing in one swoop, you're on the journey then.
Exactly.
The interest is there.
And you had some questions, and maybe some of your questions were cleared up, and now you can start to put these practices into your life, and maybe later something else will come up and you'll see it in the book and, oh, let me read about that. You're exactly right. It can be very overwhelming, the spirituality stuff.
It can be, yeah. There's a lot there.
Yeah, and I know that because when I speak to people that don't read my books, like, for example, I had got my hair cut yesterday, and she, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I write books, and, well, the woman said to me, do you read cards? Because that's the only thing people really, they don't,
Yeah.
So I said, well, I do other things. Sometimes I don't use the cards. And I said, and I write books, and I tried to begin to explain a little bit, and she just had no idea. It's very overwhelming, the information. And I said, well, maybe you could just start to read. And I gave her the first book. And I said, little by little, you'll begin to pick it up because it can be very overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be.
Do it at your own pace.
Exactly.
I think it's just important to do it at some point.
And if you have an urge and you feel like you need to know, or you feel like there's something more, then that means you should pick up a book like this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yes.
An important topic I think we should touch on is destiny versus free will, and we talked a little bit about that earlier. But some will say that free will is all well and good, but we can't change destiny. And again, I believe, as you do, that when we incarnate, we make a plan. Our lives are laid out to be played out as we believe necessary, but it's not always carved in stone. So how do you separate the destiny from the free will?
You're right. I use the analogy, our lives are like a giant road map. And as you said, before we come down, we plan out this course that we plan on taking. But as we travel down this road, things occur because we're interacting with other people's plans, right? Mm-hmm. People come into our path, and maybe it was planned, maybe not, or, things start to shift, and maybe we take a different road, or maybe we get sidetracked. So I do believe that there's destiny, but there is more than one destiny. And you can pick a road and have one specific destiny, or choose another road, and right there is another ending to your story. So it really is your choice. So that's where your free will comes in. So I believe it's a little of both, free will and destiny. But the thing about it, as you said about destiny, is that you create your destiny. You plan your destiny.
Mm-hmm. It's just sometimes a bitter pill to swallow when you're planning it and this is what needs to be done, and you get here and you have to live it. It's sometimes a shock, and you want to take it back. And again, that's where free will comes into play.
It's true. I don't tend to believe we come here and plan on being sick or suffering. I really don't. I just can't wrap my mind around that. We would come here and let's say want to have a terrible disease. I think that some things happen within the universe, and that it's not that we don't have free will, but that things do happen, and we travel down roads, and outcomes are not as what we would expect. But the thing is, we are never alone. So if something bad happens, you're always guided somehow, and you always have an angel at your side, or a deceased loved one, or a spirit guide, or source is with you. You always have that power. So whether it's free will, destiny, you're never alone in your journey here. So that's something to be comforted.
And the other thing that kind of goes along with it about calling on a guide, or you've got somebody near you, is the Ascended Masters, or are the Ascended Masters. Mm-hmm. You refer to them as the overseers of humanity, and they serve us. Now, most people will automatically think of a spirit guide when they need help. But what are the Ascended Masters? How do they differ from spirit guides, and how can they help us, and how do we get in touch with them?
Well, Ascended Masters are much higher. They're at a higher realm than a spirit guide. A spirit guide could be just it could be an ordinary person who's just a little bit more advanced spiritually than you and kind of has an affinity or something in common with you and here to guide you. But the ascended masters, such as Jesus Christ or Buddha, there's an endless number of them. And they really are way up there, just on a level below our source creator. And they have mastered all the realms. They've been through every spirit realm and mastered all the gifts of humanity and the gifts of the universe. And they are here to oversee us, and they never abandon us. And the way to ask their help is just simply to call on them. And they're always there for you, just as the angels are, or the archangels. They can be in different places at one time, and they're always here to help guide us and protect us.
And we would call out to them just as we would to our guides, yes?
Absolutely. And just as you, depending on, which ascended master you would like to call upon, they have different purposes, or maybe even your upbringing, you're more inclined to call upon one than the other, and just call upon them, and they're there for you. And the same with the archangels. They have different purposes as well. And, there's a lot of books on the archangels. And in this book, we go over some of them, and we talk about their roles. And we also have some invocations here, so that the little prayer to help you call upon an angel. So that part is really nice. So they're always there for you. You're never alone. No matter what you're going through, you're always protected and guided.
I was looking over the short list of ascended masters, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like the majority of them, or the ones that I saw, were all once on this earth alive, whereas perhaps an archangel has not been, right?
Absolutely. They are the ascended masters were once in human form, and they've ascended up to the higher realms. Exactly. They were humans at one time, and they can be human again. They don't have to go through the birth or death process anymore. They can just ascend to earth at their, whenever they choose to. And the angels, for the most part, most of these archangels have never taken human form. I believe there's only 2 that were once human, or maybe 1. I'm not sure. But the ascended masters definitely were humans, have lived in human form.
Yeah, a lot of people may be afraid to call on them because they are at such a high level. But I'm glad you brought up the point that they're there too, just as easily as our guides or loved ones on the other side. They're there and they listen.
Absolutely, and they have different energies, and so in the book it lists, kind of what their specialty is. Let's say, so if you have a special need or prayer, you would look and see which ascended master you would call upon, and same with the archangels. If you have a special situation, you can look in the book and read and see which one can help you with that. And then there's an invocation in the book to call upon them.
It's like when people pray for a particular saint to help them for certain things. Ascended masters and archangels are there. I know a lot of people know the Archangel Michael and call on him for protection and stuff, but there's so many out there and so many to choose from. And I always tell people, like when they say, well, I need a guide and, I'm having this or this problem, I said, call in a specialist. And I know it sounds like some TV commercial, but it's true. Ask for what you want and from who you want. You may not know who the ascended master is for someone that can help you with a health problem, for example, or finances or something. You don't necessarily need to call them out by name. It would be nice if, you learned, but you don't have to. They, like guides, they have no ego.
Right.
And they will hear you.
Because, and, there's so many of them. There's an endless number, of ascended masters. So to expect someone to know everyone and what their purpose is. But, at least here in the book, there's a short list for you to go through, and that could help you. Oh, okay. Like, for example, maybe someone wants to conceive or are having some infertility problems. They may call upon Mother Mary, or maybe Kuan Yin or some one of the ascended masters that helps work with fertility issues. So there's a little list here that might help. But like you said, just ask for what you want, and whoever it is that is going to help you is going to come. So
and don't be afraid. I mean, they're not going to pop down on your bed in the middle of the night and scare you, kind of thing. I mean,
no. And the biggest part is to believe. To really believe that you're not alone, and that your angels or your guides or ascended masters are always there for you. And it's sometimes, like we've been saying, Earth is a scary place. It's a harsh, very can be a frightening place to be, and it's nice to know that you're not alone, and that there is an energy or a higher power there for you at all times.
Yeah, and also not only believe but acknowledge.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important too. And also thank them when you get what you need. And there's that fine line between what you want and what you need. And I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, that usually we get what we need. It may not be what we want, but it's a step, baby steps that go all the way up.
It's true. And that goes back to our human self, that human ego kind of wants what it wants, and it will stamp its feet and say, this is what I need, but really has no idea what the spirit really needs. Then we always get what the spirit needs. So,
and even if it's not what we want, thank him.
Right. Even if it's not what the human side wants, it's always what the spirit needs. So we have to have that faith, and we have to trust. So when things aren't always kind of going our way, it happens to everyone. And I always feel like when one door closes, okay, this is spirits calling for me to find my way to another door, a better place. There's somewhere I belong, and it's not where I thought I belonged. So, you just have to have that faith that you're guided and you're going to be in the right place, no matter what your human side tells you.
And let's not forget the life lessons that go along with it.
Absolutely. You have to take whatever happens, as upsetting or challenging as it is, you have to take what education comes from it and then kind of move on to the next. And, you'll learn and grow in the process. And
that's what it's all about, learning and growing.
Yes.
And it's also about time running out. So before we do run out of time,
went very fast, Marla.
It does. I'm there's not even any speed bumps during my show. It's really crazy. It just goes all the way through.
Really?
Where can people get in touch with you, find out more about you, your books, your new tarot deck, which is coming out, anything else?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can visit me at www.savannaharienta.com, and that's SAHVANNAARIENTA. I know that's a mouthful, but I have savannaharienta.com, and anything new that's coming up I post, and the links for the books are there. And also, if you'd like to email me, there's a contact form, and I would love to hear from you.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I've learned a great deal from your book. I know others will as well. And as I said earlier, if I were a school teacher, I'd put it on the required reading list. So please do come back. We've got tons of stuff we can cover.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Marla.
Oh, you're welcome. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us tonight, as usual. And until next time, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at the same time for another great guest and more fun. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2009.
You have been listening to the Para X Radio Network.